6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. First of all, as we start these budget hearings, I would like to thank Patty and Barna and the finance department and staff for all putting in the effort to get us to this point. I know a lot of hard work has went into it, and it is, on behalf of the committee, truly appreciated. Thank you for supervisors coming in tonight. I always like to see as many as possible come to hear what's going on, and staff and any citizens we have. So welcome. All right, we'll start with a call to order. Roll call, please. Joe, you're in Mary's spot.
Go right ahead and I'll see what I can do.
Technical
over here.
difficulties.
Oh, is it the owl?
It is.
Leave it to the owl.
I know.
Okay, well, do you want me to do the roll call? I can
Mhm,
do
yeah.
it Standing, Supervisor Gens,
Here.
Nudo,
Yeah.
Brookhouse,
Here.
Kama,
Here.
Gashke,
Here.
Dirksen,
Here.
Kirby, here, Yig member Sasha, here, Yig member Charlotte.
Thank you. All right, departmental review. We're gonna start with county board. Anybody gonna speak county board's behalf? Oh, hi. Hi, Chairman.
Good evening, Chairman Gens, Finance Committee. I'm here tonight to present the county board budget. As you can see, our budget has pretty much stayed the same from year to year. There are 3 items that did change. Our other per diem line 2 was decreased by $1,000. And that is because we have, not over the years, we haven't hit that $5,000 mark. Our highest mark was around $3,800. So we reduced that down to $4,000. Our membership dues did increase by $115, and that's due to the cost of dues going up. And then the third item was our staff development, and that was increased because of the carryover from 2024 to 2025. I am not asking for any raises for supervisors, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on the county board budget.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Supervisor Noodle.
I don't have a question, but I would like to open comment. Basically, yeah,
You have the floor, Supervisor.
I know you mentioned, you did not put any increase for, salaries for the supervisors and, technically, we cannot increase the salaries this year because we could only do what that due board cap year. But I think it's a good thing to start looking for maybe next year and thinking about raising the supervisor pay to bring it to whatever everybody else is getting in increases.
Thank you, Supervisor Noodle.
Thank you, Supervisor Noodle. Supervisor Gearston.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the county board budget.
Been moved by Supervisor Gearston,
I'll second.
seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Any further discussion on the county board budget? Seeing none, we're gonna take each individual piece up as we go, as I discussed at our last finance meeting, while staff is here. So if you do have any questions, don't wait till Thursday night to ask them, otherwise I'll have a problem with that. So while they're here, let's have it out. So seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That check passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
County executive,
Good evening, Chairman.
this is page 315 for those of us who use books.
I don't know, maybe. So it's true.
Also for
Yeah,
those.
don't make fun of us non-digital people.
And it's page 319 in the PDF.
Good evening, Chairman Gens and committee members. It's wonderful to be back here to present or talk to you tonight about my 2025 budget. Again, I'm going to go back and look at 2024. I had some restructuring in my office, and so I changed my chief staff position from an E12 to an E10 and renamed that position to the office administrator and community outreach coordinator. And I do have a list of items of all the different events that Jill and the staff put together, if anybody is interested in that. with that, that means I have the salary went down slightly, from the chief of staff to what Jill is being paid at. So I have a little bit of a decrease in my line if you look at the salaries line. This had also given me an opportunity to reevaluate the workflow between Jill and Stacy. And so in the budget, I also have upgraded Stacy's position from an NE7 to an NE8 to coordinate with the duties that she does. So we kind of did a restructuring, looking what everybody's doing, looking what other county execs around the state do. So I've been very happy, and I hope that you have with the outreach and the communication that my staff has had with you. So with that, I had some other minor changes in my budget, some office supply. We did a little bit of just reevaluating what our office needs. Other than that, it's been pretty straightforward. So the main change though is in the salary line. The biggest. Anybody have any questions for me?
Committee, any questions, comments? Supervisor Kirby?
Can you tell me what is included in other professional services?
So that particular line item, my predecessor used for many different things. A lot of times there's studies and other things that he wanted to put forth over the years. I have used it when I first came on, was pretty much accounted for in 2022. It went for paying a fundraiser for coordinating and working with the courthouse renovation. Now we've used it just for other things, things in the parks, other little nuances where I can coordinate and work with other divisions.
Okay. Do you have any like more details on like what goes, why are we saying it's 122,000?
So my predecessor had it at 150. I have brought it down because I just don't feel like I need what he needed it for. Going forward, I'm not necessarily sure. Again, we could use studies and just coordinating. So like, for instance, in parks, when Wyatt comes to me and says he needs something, we did some purchasing of some items for the Christmas tree lighting ceremony out of there. Again, we coordinated and worked with them. Again, a big portion of it this particular year went to pay the Abbey Group to finish off the fundraising commitments that we've had. But going forward, I don't have a big push right at this moment. That's why I decreased the line item.
Okay. Yeah, no, I wanted to get an idea of what goes into that number. How are we building up this other professional services budget line? You know, and is it just based on past year's performance? Is it, we know we are going to do these things in the upcoming year, or we think we're going to do these things in the upcoming year?
So last year, I also, during the carryover, I gave a big portion of that to the county board so that they could beef up their line item, so they had money for additional staff coming on. So I don't know exactly how much we gave in the carryover for last year.
It's 26,000.
Okay, so it can be used for things that are not planned for.
Correct.
Okay.
Supervisor Gearston?
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the county executive's budget.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston,
Second.
seconded by Supervisor, I got that. Second by Supervisor Yashki. We're gonna continue with discussion. Any other supervisors on the committee that have anything right now? Supervisor Nordigan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The outside consultant that gave it to Kemper Center, was that used in the parks or was that used out of this too?
That one came out of, I think, Parkland Development. So that didn't.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You done?
Thanks.
Supervisor Grady?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 315, grants and contributions. There also there are collective lines around that. 2024 adopted 32,875. This year 31,000. What are the largest or the primary contributions to that line item? What does the funding come from for that?
That's where the chairman's promotion, where the community outreach and promotion line falls.
Okay, so that particular line, I just don't have it right in front of me. So a lot of that goes for instance, my predecessor would give $25,000 for fireworks and different things for outreach throughout the county. I did something a little bit differently. I gave $12,000 to the city and did all the other different communities that also do fireworks. So again, I tapped that into being countywide, not just a couple different groups.
So this is a line item for expenditures. This is not actually an income side, right?
Correct.
Expense side?
Correct.
Okay, sure, well, that's my question.
Seeing nobody else, my turn. The other professional services, I understood where you're coming from and really, we're not looking at your predecessor's budgeting, we're looking at yours. But, in projected for 2024, I'm seeing 169.
That's because we carried over from the last budget cycle. So again, and a lot of that went into the refresh of the logo.
Okay, so 169, a lot of that was carried over, so the 122 is, how much was carried over? Cause there's I mean, that's a $70,000 drop, so it was 75,000 carried over.
37,000 was carried.
Last year's adopted budget was 132.5.
Yep.
Brought it down to 122.5. I believe the discussion at the time of the carryover was the logo refresh, the spending to purchase new things and engage outside to get all of that in line. So that's why the carryover occurred rather than last.
But
Okay.
I'll give you an update on the logo, just so that everybody is clear on how much we actually did spend on all the items that we did have to refresh, that we have refreshed. We spent about $670 on just the finishing touches. So we had our group, our committee that worked on it, but then we sought the guidance of a professional marketer, and so we spent about $670 on that. We spent $3,200 on flags. We bought some merchandise, the lapel pins. We spent $5,400 on pins. The most expensive item is going to be the refresh of our county ID tags, but that is all being done into house, and that's about $11,000.
Okay, I mean, my concern from a numbers perspective is we had a much bigger number and then we're going down to a much lower number. So if you're telling me we carried over a huge part of that and that it's going from 132 to 122 and those are more actual numbers, that's okay. But I don't want to see 169 and we budget 122. That's where I'm coming from. So, all right.
Well, we were unsure too, as well with the fundraising efforts of the Abbey Group. We had a change of fundraisers in midterm, so we weren't sure where we were gonna end up. My predecessor also used that account to actually hire a lobbyist out in Washington, DC. I haven't sought that authority yet. I have communicated with a couple lobbyists as we go back into legislative session coming this cycle. It might be beneficial that we actually have somebody on retainer out there who could help us with our shoreline and our other grants that we might be seeking out in Washington.
It's the shoreline. All right, reserves, I'm on that item now. Well, you got 150,000 in reserves. What is that number? What goes into your reserves?
So our general fund policy allows for the county to annually use 300,000 of reserves. Historically, we've used 150,000 toward the county executive's budget and 150,000 in IT's budget to go for scanning projects.
And it looks to me like we used all that up, right?
Right. It's a revenue line item. It's basically using reserves towards the budget.
Okay,
And it's limited, like I said, to 300,000 per year.
all right. Any other final questions or comments? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Court counsel, page 322 in paper.
And I believe it's 319 on the PDF. Good evening, supervisors. I strive for this always to be the dullest 5 minutes you're gonna have all week. So
You think it's gonna be that.
that's always my fault. So let me start just by trying to sort of answer a couple of the questions that tend to come up fairly regularly. If you look at the organizational chart for the office, you'll see that it's listed as being 5.7 FTEs. We do have 6 full-time employees, 4 attorneys, 2 support staff. The reason for that discrepancy is that one 0.15 of the first assistant corp counsel and 0.15 of one of the two executive assistants is charged to a different line item because they liaise with our insurer and handle a liability matter. So that's just the explanation there, but we do have a 6-person office. I say that in part to introduce the idea that the majority of this budget, about 64%, is salaries. And then when you factor in insurance, retirement, workers' compensation, that brings it up to 87% of the total. I point that out only to say that it's only about 13% of the budget that is actually under sort of my control, if you will, in terms of my ask. The budget as a whole remains pretty stationary from year to year. There's very little change in the numbers. There are 2 exceptions. One of them is a relatively standard one, by which I mean every year I goose the line for books and manuals about $1,500 because I assume that everything's going to get more expensive in the next year. The other change this year is in terms of my discretionary ask. We have a line item for legal fees, which is for outside counsel. That item has remained at $40,000 since 2011, 2 corporation councils ago. The last couple of years that the ask has remained 40,000. The actual give, if you will, has been supplemented in part because the county executive has requested some additional money placed in that account because of known expenses that were coming forward. Having said that, in consultation with the finance team, I think that the $60,000 ask, frankly, just more accurately represents what we are anticipating spending to the best of our understanding. As I sort of joked at the legislative committee last week, it's the old Donald Rumsfeld saw about you have your known knowns, your known unknowns, and your unknown unknowns. But the fact is the world has gotten more complicated. It has gotten more litigious, and lawyers' fees certainly have not remained static for the last 12 or 13 years. So what do we use that line item for? We bring outside counsel in really in 3 broad instances. We try to do as much in-house as possible, but there's sort of 3 general areas in which we do bring outside counsel in. Number 1, if there's a conflict, and when I say that, I mean an actual potential or perceived reason why it would be either unethical, illegal, or unwise for the office to be involved in something. 2 highly specialized matters. The example I always come up with for that was the casino. Is a very, very highly specialized law, and we had outside counsel working with us on that. Or something that's time sensitive, something where we could probably get to the answer if we needed to, but if we need it faster than it's going to be able to be realistically done in-house, we will sometimes make a couple of quick phone calls and ask someone to do that for us. Some of the examples of what we use that line item for is ethics investigations. You may or may not know that under our ordinance, it is required that if a complaint comes in about behavior that has already been alleged to have occurred, I am obligated to turn that over to an outside agency or outside individual to investigate it. We've had one of those this past year. Certain employment matters, either because there is a conflict or because we sometimes just have a sense early on that it's something that's likely to wind up in litigation, and it sometimes makes more sense to get outside lawyers involved early on if they're going to be taking the case further on. We consult with the WCA on certain matters. Right now, we're in the midst of a review of both the ethics and the rules ordinances. It's been going on for some time now. Specialized ordinances. A couple years ago, we refreshed our adult establishment ordinance to make sure that we were consistent with updates in First Amendment law. We are currently in the midst of a new ordinance on battery energy storage systems, which the PDEC committee has been working on. Again, we've been working with outside counsel on that. We had a public records lawsuit last year in which specific allegations were made about members of the office, and we determined again it made more sense to have somebody outside the office handling that. So these are the types of things that we tend to do. Again, that is the largest chunk of the, I'll call it again, discretionary part of my budget. I could go through the rest of the line items, although they're fairly negligible. If there are questions about what the money is spent on, again, I can certainly provide some information. The other thing I will just point out is that although there is a revenue line indicated in there, we are certainly not a revenue unit. The revenue that's indicated in there was ARPA money that was provided to beef up the outside counsel or the legal fees budget line. But as a general rule, we are not expected to bring in any money to the county. I'm sorry. Just not how we're built. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about the budget.
Supervisor Nudo.
I'm satisfied that we went through it with the changes from the previous year, so with the exception of the extra money for outside counsel, which is very expected. And with that, I'll make the motion to second.
It's been moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Gaske to approve. Further questions from the committee? Supervisor Gama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Subscriptions, I'm guessing that subscriptions to like magazines, books.
Yeah, so we have two lines, and there's honestly a little bit of spillover between the two of them. But we've got books and manuals, which tends to be physical materials.
Yeah.
The other one, the subscriptions, is online legal resources, state bar materials, etc. We're also in the process of finishing up a refresh of the ordinances online. That's going to be an annual subscription that we indicated that we would bear out of our budget. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so the bump in personnel is just step increases, I would assume?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
There've been no changes in the office since the last.
Right. I was gonna ask about the 20,000. We moved ARPA money into that for just a one-time shot to boost other professional services or something? What did we do?
Yes, to boost the legal, outside legal.
I was just, I think it was specifically knowing some of the casino stuff.
Okay.
That
All right.
and like I say, and the ethics and the rules.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Register of Deeds. Page 294 in the important piece. That's the important.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here presenting the 30th budget that I have prepared for the Kenosha County Register of Deeds office, and the 12th, the final budget that I am presenting. I have with me my deputy Jennifer, who is running unopposed to replace me next year. So hopefully you all give her the support that you will need. It's bittersweet for me to be here tonight.
Well, thank you for your service.
And thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank Kenosha County Finance Department for the wonderful job you've done over all these years, streamlining this budget process. Barna's been around a while. He knows, Dave knows what we had in 1995 compared to what we have today in 2024. It's a much nicer product. So looking at the Register of Deeds budget, it's pretty much the same as it has been the past number of years. Like the Corporation Council, the vast majority of our budget is salaries and benefits. The things that we do have a little control over are small office supplies and things like that. I have a slight increase in mileage and travel. My concern is with Jennifer coming in as a new register, that she have the ability to attend the conferences and seminars that she's going to need to develop herself as the next Register of Deeds. And as you all know, with inflation, expenses, hotel rooms, everything is more expensive than it's been. We are reducing our revenue a little bit in transfer fees and Register of Deeds fees, basically due to the flat real estate market. Total recordings this year are up slightly 4% over last year, which is a good sign, but it's not enough to bring our revenue in line. We've recently, shockingly, had a reduction in interest rates.
And anyone who's been around for a while could have expected that. So hopefully that'll hold even after the election. And that's really about all I've got. Do you have some questions for me?
Supervisor Gearson.
Mr. Chairman, I would be my honor to make a motion to approve your last budget. If I get a second, I'd like to make a comment.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearson, second by Supervisor Nudo. You still have the floor, Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as you know, I have 30 years of experience and over 40 years of professional experience. It was always wonderful. You always met the gold standard. It was wonderful working with you. And thank you so much for the wonderful job you did at the county. It was always great to work with you, and we had to work together quite a bit.
Yes,
So
we did.
thank you very much. That concludes my time. I yield the floor.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Supervisor Kirby.
So I just wanted to ask about the fees and the transfer tax. Do we think we're gonna see an increase then in the real estate market next year because of the lower interest rates?
You know, I left my crystal ball downstairs.
To the best of your ability, is that kind of where that number is coming from?
It comes from history, you know,
Okay.
we kind of look at, we do an average of where we've been, you know, we take like a 36-month average, and then we look at, are we seeing any increases, you know, in income and revenue? We've got to try and be optimistic. I mean, we know that it's gonna come.
Yeah.
You know, it is gonna come back. Transfer fees should come back significantly with the cost of houses once they start selling. Because I don't see a significant decline in the cost of housing, so.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Anybody else? Obviously, we have step increases in salaries again.
Right.
I'm gonna say that on everyone, just to make sure. Yeah, and I was looking at the revenue. And I guess I don't have a problem with the budgeting of 1.6 to 1.5, but in the actual, we're always at 1.1, 1.2.
Not always, just the last year or so. There's been
Okay.
plenty of years when we've been well over that.
Cause in 23 and again,
Yeah,
this year.
I mean, I would argue that it's not been a slow time. It's definitely been a slow time, but those are not unrealistic expectations for our revenue. I mean, we've had years where our revenue, like last year, I think we only reported 20,000 documents. And the year that I reported the most documents was 65,000 documents. So this is all directly related to, you know, if I could go outside and say, come on, record your documents here. It's, you know, it's a market.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea. But yeah, I mean, we've made a lot of inroads with, you know, making it easier for our submitters when I travel around the state, and not just the Register of Deeds office, but I get compliments about our IT department, you know, how people can so easily access our information, whether it's taxes or property information or recorded documents. So, you know, Kenosha County has definitely got an edge. We may not be the biggest county, but I would argue we're the best.
That's kind of a given. But I'm still going back to I mean, did somebody go back 5 years and tell us, or 10 years, and see where the 1.5 compares? Cause I just don't want to have budgeting, you know, 400,000 more in revenue, and then we don't have it.
Yeah.
I did reduce the amount that I had projected for last year, for this year. So I know that Barna, I believe you did make an adjustment to even, I mean, I had reduced it further, but then Barna felt that it would be prudent to
Trying to smooth out
see if
we
we
don't
could
want
get
to
a little
budget
bit
it at
more.
the low point, but we want to catch it on the upswing.
And it would also speak to the interest rates going down, will lower mortgage interest rates. which hopefully-
And there's a definite uptick. There's a definite uptick in activity
Yeah.
currently. I'm seeing a lot more listings, so.
But even a 50% increase in her recordings, would be potentially $600.
Okay. Any other further questions or comments? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joint services, 95 in the big book.
Chairman. Thanks for having me. My name is Joshua Nielsen. I'm the director for Kenosha Joint Services. I'm in your budget book there, you'll see that the county portion of joint services budget in 2025 will be $5,710,667. That is an increase from in our tax levy. The tax levy for joint services went up $245,000. Our budget from 2024 to 2025. The county's portion of that, though, the way that the apportionment ratio worked out this year is actually $277,000. So the county's eating up the entire tax levy increase for Kenosha Joint Services for 2025. That changes every year. That apportionment ratio that comes down from the state modifies how much the city and the county split joint services budget. And this year happens to be one of the years where the county ends up paying more than the city. I think last year it was the opposite. So it kind of goes back and forth from year to year, depending on that apportionment ratio that comes down from the states. Some of the drivers of our budget increase this year are wage scale increases. We have a 2% wage scale increase for employees. We have budgeting for a 7% increase in health insurance, renewal costs. And then those are the main driving factors behind the budget increase. Contractual services for joint services is going up about $57,000, and that's driven by mainly a couple of things. It's lease space going up, and then we've got some contracts with 911 provider, radio equipment provider that is driving up those contractual service increases. We have some increases in the supplies and materials that we're anticipating for next year, and that's really under fuel usage between the police department and the sheriff's department, and then parts and supplies through our fleet maintenance, the maintaining and building out of the squad cars. So every year we continue to see increases in costs in those two areas, and that's another driver for expenditures for joint services. This year in our what we consider our capital expenditures, which are basically furniture and equipment over $5,000, we're seeing a decrease there of about $6,000. We do have one significant project going on to replace some furniture consoles in the dispatch center. That we budgeted $16,000 for joint services, but the majority of that, 90% of that cost, which is about $168,000. That's going through the state of Wisconsin grant. So the state's, we're waiting to hear back from them. We did a similar thing last year with the 911 project. And we'll find out by the end of October whether or not we've received that grant money or not. So that we're still waiting to hear word on, and we'll know where we need to go from there. That really is kind of a synopsis of the joint services budget, and I can answer any questions anybody might have.
Any questions or comments? Supervisor Kirby?
So how is the joint services budget in total, not just the county portion, how does that get put together?
How does it get put together? So we sit down, so we've got our department heads sit down and put budgets together. And it is mainly driven by personnel costs. 75% of our budget is personnel costs. So we sit down, we go through, we work through that local within joint services. And then we work with the city and the county finance departments. Once we kind of get our draft together, what we're looking at for this year, for the next year, we sit down with them. We talk about what parameters we need to work within. We look at what we're needing from personnel standpoints. So we also work with law enforcement, with the police department and the sheriff's department to determine what their needs are to make sure that we're meeting their needs. So there's many factors that go into that development. So we're working with many, many different departments trying to put that all together.
Okay, thank you.
And then eventually then that goes to the Joint Services Board, who then will make changes and modifications to that budget as needed.
Okay. And then, I also wanted to know, do you know how much of that like 57K increase is due to like increases in building rent?
$26,106.
Perfect.
God, that's good. Yeah,
That's really,
I have it written down. I'm not remembering.
Any other questions or comments? Supervisor Grady.
Just a quick question I can ask the sheriff's department separately. Just from your experience with the police department, KPD, in terms of enforcement type, openings, positions, how full, how empty, how vacant are we on basically patrolman type, sergeant, detective type positions there?
Patrol for the sheriff's department side. I really couldn't answer that. I don't know.
For KPD.
For KPD, I know that, I know that they are still continuing to fill positions. I don't know what those exact numbers are. Yeah, I don't know, but I know they're still continuing to fill. The last week I had heard, I believe they had a hiring list going. So I know they still continually have, hiring processes going,
Sure.
but I don't know what those exact numbers are.
As far as their staffing, they're down 7 on the telecommunicators and they have 3 ready to go. So they'll be down 4 from the 32. So that's an ongoing battle and cycle that they have going at joint services and stuff. What?
For KPD.
No, for joint services, joint services, not
For joint
KPD.
services. Yeah, he's, Chairman's referring to specifically the dispatchers.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under the 2024 budget adopted and modified on 6/30, we have the bonding of 355,000 and carryover 181,741, which totals to 536,41. But yet when we come over the projected, the 181,741 kind of disappears. We know why that happens. I don't think that's a problem here. Finance, crack finance.
Since he was
The 188.
just 181.
181.
It's a revenue line item, so the 181 would be reflected in the computer miscellaneous line up above.
Apparently it only carries over to one line.
The 181 is embedded in that 530. So the adopted budget for computer miscellaneous was 355. The modified budget was 536. So the difference between that is 181,000.
That's the carry.
That's the carryover.
Yeah, so where did that drop off at then? Talking about it isn't all the way out to the projected 1231.
So the 181 is in the 536.
But the 536 doesn't come out at projected 1231. You go all the way to the column 5, it's not in there. I'm just wondering why.
Oh. We normally do not put any dollar amounts in or actual for carryover.
It just goes into where we modify it.
It goes into the expense line item in which it was approved for.
But I defend, I'm just,
I mean, it's just,
at that point, why even put it in there if it's gonna be the same as the adopted budget? But your adopted budget line 2 is gonna be the same as your line 5, but you're not carrying that.
Well, if you-
carryover. Why isn't it showing all the way to the end?
so if you look at the revenue section on the top of page 97,
Yeah, so.
there's the original budget of 355
Right.
and then a carryover of 181. So the total of those two is 536. In the projected column, yes, we could have put 536.
Should that not have been in there? That's not, I guess, what I'm asking.
We could have, but historically, we have not adjusted the carryover line. Just,
So I would be one thing, but not projected.
yeah. No, I get where your question is.
Okay.
The main thing is on the expense side.
Yeah,
Make sure
okay.
that-
All right, thank you.
Oh, I get your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So is that gonna be,
Not a problem.
no, is that gonna be expended? I mean, are we gonna get that in? I mean,
We carried the money over
I understand. I followed everything.
and it's being expended. The
Okay.
expectation is by the end of the year, we'll fully.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we won't need to, right, I got it. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? This moved yet? Somebody tell me.
I'll move approval of joint service budget.
It's been moved by Supervisor Geertsen, second by Supervisor Kirby to approve the joint services budget. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. District Attorney.
Hello, everybody. So it seems like it's a night of last appearances. So but I can't compete with 30. She said 30 years?
She did.
Yeah, that's awe-inspiring. Should I begin?
Please.
All right, so 8th time I've been here, and really, I don't get enough chances to thank the county board for what I think has just been a spectacular partnership over these 8 years. And so I just want to really briefly thank the county board for some things that I just think were magnificent, sort of combined efforts, all parties on board, making sure that this county really thrived in terms of our ability to do the work in the DA's office. So we began 8 years ago by talking about the opiate crisis, which was a tremendous destruction of all sorts of places in terms of the social fabric and impacting the criminal justice system and impacting our budgets in many places as a county. You guys funded diversion programs and resources through social services that allowed us to really attack that problem. As other counties' number of overdose deaths dramatically increased, we stayed close to the same, and pre-COVID even had a couple of years where we dipped, while nationally overdose deaths in the opiate crisis were going up. So I really think our combination of really of really emphasizing overdose cases as a chance to prosecute dealers, but also offering all sorts of diversion opportunities to first-time abusers who are caught in the system. That carrot and stick method, I still think, is really a promising place for all parties in government to be able to partner. And I really think we were showing it worked until COVID distracted and threw into really difficult circumstances a lot of our programming in those regards. We're back now to a place where, again, I think our efforts are evened out in terms of its levels. And so from the state's perspective, there's a lot of preventative, literally lives were saved by some of the things the county board were directly invested in. We went from being an office with large paper files and literally rooms and rooms filled with paper files to a paperless office. So you literally helped us go from the 20th century to the 21st century, perhaps even the 19th century to the 21st century, saving tens of thousands of dollars in the line items I used to talk about in terms of office supplies, and saving tens of thousands of hours, where our clerical staff, for instance, used to spend the last 2 hours of every one of their working days searching in the various nooks and crannies we had where files would have to be found for the next day. Now think about literally how easy it is, where no one has to ever search for a file. It's literally on everybody's laptop. And so saved a bunch of money, but just saved time and really changed how we did that. We were literally the third county in the state to do that. People come to us now to ask us how that process worked as one of the we were the first larger county to do that in the state, funded and supported directly by the county board. We had as part of the opiate crisis, we had a crisis in our foster care system. We had 53 additional kids in one single year come into our foster care system. And that was a crisis that was going to be a financial crisis, but just a personal crisis as well, right? The judges, the social services, and the DA's office came to the county board and said, we need more social service resources. We're going to devote more judicial resources, and we need another county-funded partial position for a prosecutor to attack this problem directly. We're now finished with that bubble. That's over now. We're back to a pretty standardized group of children in foster care. What happened was we TPR'd, meaning termination of parental rights, kids in that bubble, 53 kids, who all had permanent homes waiting for them. All right, so these are kids who were waiting literally for adoption as soon as somebody brought the resources to bear. The end result, when I saw the county board's final report about it, was that this county had saved $250,000. But most importantly, right, 50 kids got into their permanent homes a year earlier than they would have had the county board not been a partner in those efforts. And then the last thing is, we've come to you now a couple of different times, a couple of years ago, and said, we have the opportunity to do specialist positions in our county where we get to keep our top prosecutors. They don't go to other places because we give them the best opportunities to do the most important cases. But we needed support staff to do that. So we needed extra victim witness resources. We needed extra paralegal resources. And the county board again helped us with that. That's allowed us to be a county that has a permanent gun prosecutor, somebody who does that full time as a position. As the gun violence in this community went up a few years ago, we had a specialist who was going to be able to handle that. And then also somebody who does sexual assaults, right? The most difficult, really, the kind of cases that you break your heart, but also are just really difficult from a prosecution perspective for juries to listen to and to be able to come back and hold people responsible. So we have a specialist in that regard too. So we're a county that 8 years ago had no specialist in those positions, and now we have persons who are dedicated to those. Again, that gives you a chance to keep your very most talented, experienced prosecutors, right? They don't have to do a general caseload anymore. They don't go to a different county where they might be able to do only felonies. And so it's a retention thing for us as well. Okay, so that's my thanks. Obviously, most of my budget is discretionary stuff. The two things that I think are just, minor changes. I hope they're minor changes. One is a $3,000 reduction in our temporary salary budget. That is a funding source where we fund paying a law school graduate, so a lawyer, to do extra drafting for us. The judges have asked us over the weekends, can you have someone draft over the weekends? Can you have someone draft on Monday where we have almost all our trials? Can you have a dedicated person to draft? Otherwise, we cannot get all the in custodies done. I need you to understand that over a weekend in Kenosha County, typically about 25 new people have been placed under arrest. We get those reports at about 9, and the expectation is from 9 to noon, we will read all those reports, make professional charging decisions that hopefully we can continue to support and have those drafted, so have the written complaints done. To be able to do that, we use that temporary salary item. We had 18,000, I think, in the previous budget. It's been reduced to 15,000 this year. And again, we have a dedicated employee who does a number of different things, but she bills us for that drafting out of that line item. So we are asking for a reduction in that. The only other thing I think is an increase that we have any discretion over or had some ability to have discretion over was other professional services. That is where we fund both our diversion prosecutor and our 4E prosecutor. That's again the termination of parental rights prosecutor that is on a federal grant. So the federal government reimburses us 40% for all of the termination of parental rights work that's done by that prosecutor, and 20% for all CHIPS, children in need of protection and services. So this year we have a $20,000 increase in that line item. There's no new hiring. The person that is a state employee, because that person is paid as under the state prosecutor system. Because there's been some pay raises over the last few years, we need to increase the budget to reconcile those pay raises that all the state employee prosecutors have gotten. And also there's been what the finance people have told me is called a budget reconciliation moment, where the federal government and the state, the county and the federal government have a different valuation of that position, and we are in line with the federal valuation of that position. So it had to be done to satisfy the federal government, who's providing that very substantial amount of money. I think those are the only real substantial changes that we present this year, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And also to have Tina assist me on any of the detailed questions I've already heard some people ask.
Supervisor Nudo.
Okay, going back to all the professional services, where it's been increased by 20,000.
Yes.
But also I see here that the project at the end of December this year, it's 179,350. Which still, even though with the $20,000 increase, is a little over almost $13,000 less than what we projected this year. Why is that?
Why are we still 13,000 less than the total?
Yes.
So yeah, that was a decision made by finance, so I'll let them go through that with you.
The change in the, being able to, the change in the charge will be effective January 1, so that's why the 2025 budget will be adjusted, but it's not in effect for this year. So the actual cost will be increased, will be higher this year compared to last year. We're increasing.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Actually, what I believe there's a other professional service there that will be in, that's in this year's budget, that won't be in next year's budget. I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know which one.
Was it a Howard County case or?
No,
Nothing.
So my understanding was that finance indicated that in terms of the reconciliation of the
Yeah.
federal contribution and state, that was the decision made by the county this year in terms of how we were gonna budget to meet that reconciliation.
I mean, your question is, why is that
Why didn't we do
amount
it?
this year?
He's
that
asking,
higher?
right, he's
What
asking
the
why we didn't do
projection
this.
is off the top, I don't know, but I can.
Yeah, he's asking, there's 179,000 in there at the end,
Yeah,
the actual. And
That's just
I can
the-
appreciate
Yeah,
the
just a
increase of
projection.
20, but yeah,
It's just a projection at this point. I'll find out why. It could be, actually, it might be just a doubling of the 6-month amount without knowing that.
okay.
I believe that might be, it should,
And I know you said that church was paid by finance.
yeah.
Did you as a DA feel comfortable with that? That it's gonna,
Yeah, so what happened was we identified that the federal government, who obviously is a major contributor to this, and the county were valuing this position differently, right? And so we had to, in terms of the reconciliation, we were increasing the county contribution to value it in the same way the federal government is. Obviously, we don't want to jeopardize our federal money, right? And so that's what we did. And so I'm comfortable with finance because they're the individuals who had those discussions or those initial decisions about how to reconcile that.
so your other professional services more of like state people that, we had to come up with, and that's where you're getting these numbers, right? The other professional.
As to the increase.
Right.
Right. The other one is a standardized one, which is our diversion employee, and that salary increase, that salary has not changed.
We still have one.
well, I'm satisfied with that. That's where it's, okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
Been moved by Supervisor Nudo, second by Supervisor Gashke. Go ahead.
What's included in the medical insurance section? Like, I see it's increased by 25,000.
Increase,
Or increase, sorry.
is that what you said?
She hit on something that I was gonna ask on.
Okay.
You got medical insurance up here that is going down, but then it increases later. So I was gonna ask about that same question, so.
Okay, yeah, so that's not, those are figures that are just provided us, so maybe finance could help with that.
So the medical insurance line item is based on census. So the fact that it went up or it went down, most likely has to do with the difference between a single and a family charge. So it's,
Employees within the office choose single or family.
and there's a budgeted rate for each of those, and then based on the census, based on the number of employees that choose single or family expectation, that's what determines that budget line.
So you're projecting that, you're estimating
Correct.
who would normally do it. Okay.
Anything else?
I thought it was like tied to like the opioid prices and things.
Oh, it's actually the employees themselves.
Boy,
It's how they're getting it. Yeah.
So there wasn't a moving of an individual, because down under the victim witness portion, it increases.
the insurance.
Yep. and
So I'm looking at, what?
It's probably for that same reason. With turnover, someone comes in that's a family, then it would increase from us.
Okay, nobody switched places in here. It's just who took what coverages.
Yes.
Or what our estimate is
Right.
for that.
Could it be that the really old guy is leaving the office?
I think we've already established that.
He's younger than me.
Supervisor Kirby.
So just to follow up on that medical insurance question, so do we actually look at who is in the department rather than just like, this is how we allocate the total medical insurance cost per person?
Literally by person.
It's that detailed?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Supervisor Gama.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. What is this expert witness, line here?
That's what I.
Yeah, so, when we have jury trials, we use that line item to be able to bring in experts, and we have to pay experts. So we, for instance, if we have a homicide, we have a medical examiner who has to come in and say, I did the autopsy. If we have a sexual assault case, we might have an expert on interviewing children or about the medical exam that happened for those children. I once had a case where, a murder case several years ago where a woman froze her child to death in a shower, and I had to bring an expert on the effects of frozen water on an 8-year-old child with almost no body fat. So it's really hard to tell what an expert will be and even what they'll charge, but we've given you an estimate of sort of based on the idea of what trials are coming. Typically, it's a homicide or a very serious trial.
So it varies case by case.
It does, right? And it also varies on what the defense is in the case.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So the increase in the salary line, that's a little more than steps. Did we do anything with that? I mean, that's 26,000 in the salary line. And then down here also in victim witness, did we pay another half a person? What do we?
Yeah. Yes, because the victim witness and the paralegal that were funded by ARPA funds were funded for 2 years because the special prosecutor was for 2 years. That ended in the middle of last year, but then the state gave you those special prosecutors and you needed to continue to support them with those positions. So they were half positions last year, they're full positions.
That explains it.
Yeah, half last year, now full. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We got a clap for him too. Fine.
I'm gonna clap for you guys for a second.
I do have one question before you leave. You're leaving this eight years later. Do you see anything in your department now, because you're not gonna be around, so you can throw anything you want out, that is a problem or anything, or needs work, or? I mean, are you leaving anything behind that we need? Well, that's
I
not.
mean, like a worry,
I mean, yeah,
a worry or a project we didn't get
yeah,
to.
yeah. I mean, from your opinion, you've been in there. I'm just,
Boy, I wish you had asked me that question to give me some chance to think about that, because I would have really taken up some time for it.
yeah, well, that's probably why.
Yeah, that's probably
Okay.
why you did. Yeah, no, I mean, here's what I just want to say. My plea to you is continue this sort of fabulous bipartisan, sort of nonpartisan approach with the DA's office. You know, you have a set of just excellent professionals in that office, and they have really been well served by this county board. When I go around to the state and talk about what the county board has done for the DA's office in Kenosha, you guys are literally the envy of those other DAs in terms of the support you've given. So I just want to be sure you guys, I don't think you hear enough from agencies like mine that have had a lot of, big things happen in the last few years, how grateful we are about all those contributions. Nothing is coming to mind. Really, when I've asked you guys to answer the call, I really feel like you guys have done that over the years.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Juvenile intake, page 85.
Did I hear you say 75, the page number?
80.
Oh, I had 75. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Hey, Good evening, Chairman, committee members, and other supervisors that are present. I'm Mary Byer from Kenosha County Juvenile Court Intake. I only have 4 changes in my budget recommendations for next year. First, in the personnel appropriation unit, an $8,600 increase, and that is due to step increases. Public liability line item, a decrease of $1,375. And then in the furniture fixtures line item, I'm asking for $700 to replace a desk chair that's falling apart. The biggest change is in the other professional services account, which in my budget accounts for juvenile detention. We have been able to stay well under budget the last several years due to a decrease in usage, and with the assistance of the finance team, both Barna and Matt, the ability to carry over remaining funds at year end. In 2024, the line item was originally budgeted at $475,000. Then it was modified to $664,738 when carryover from 2023 was added. Through the first 9 months of this year, expenditures total $273,000, or roughly that amount, which is less than anticipated, taking into account trends in utilization, daily rates remaining steady at most frequently used facilities, and the availability of continued carryover. I am recommending a $125,000 decrease in this line item for next year. In summary, I'm recommending a decrease of $117,015 in next year's budget. And that is all I have. I'll take any questions.
I like when people decrease. Supervisor Kirby?
So my question is that so are we projecting that we will carry over this year? So this 350,000 is in addition to whatever we carry over? Okay. That was my question.
Any other questions or comments? Supervisor Nato?
I don't think we can complain too much. We have a budget, so let's approve it. So I'll make a motion on that.
It's been moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Kirby to approve. Any other questions or comments? Supervisor Belsky.
I just want to say that if you haven't had the opportunity to spend some time in Director Byer's organization, her responsibilities, I can't believe what a small group accomplishes, seriously, and the type of work that they do. So if you have the opportunity, schedule some time with her. You'll be very impressed. And the fact that you're saving money, kudos to you.
Thank you. And anytime.
The one question I have is, so that other professional services, just for that one thing, has the ability to take kids to Lake been any impact in that or not? I mean, where we have to send people, or is that more on the adult level?
No, we're still, are you talking about where we send?
Court ordered, yeah, I mean intakes or, you know,
Right,
where.
we are still using facilities around the state. Today we have kids in Fond du Lac, Washington County, and one in Racine County. We have 6 kids in right now. So the youth that my budget covers are youth in general population. They're generally predisposition or pre-adjudication, pre-conviction for those of you that don't know what the terminology is. But no, we still use facilities around the state. Today there are 10 or 11 facilities available to us. So we have to go where the bed is available.
Okay. All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Finance. 270 is. All right. 270 first.
Good evening, I'm Matthew Fleming with Purchasing Division. So our budget's pretty simple. We are mostly salary. We buy a lot of stuff, but not necessarily for ourselves too much. We just deal with some paper and some pens. Salaries are about even. We did see a slight reduction in our professional services. What that is a risk management contract. We've been squeezing them a little bit, to try to get a little more, leverage on our end. And we've got to reduce it a little bit. I expect that's going to go back up over the next couple of years, but we'll get the reduction where we can get it. And then the only other increase is that we also have a subscriptions. Now that went up because we are actually going to funnel we actually have an Amazon Prime, Business Prime. And then we got saddled with the bill for that. We're paying for everyone else's Amazon Prime. We're happy to do that for everyone. So that's gone up. But we do actually see a reduction in the total cost. So that actually pays for itself a little bit. And the expedited shipping, then we get some additional shipping discounts, where we wouldn't have gotten the free shipping in some cases. So it's well worth to do. We kind of monitor that. I think we're about $250,000 spend with Amazon Prime each year, which makes that, worth doing. So if it gets below that, well, we'll just go to our regular instead of a Business Prime. We'll just go to a regular. As far as that goes, that's pretty much all the changes. Everything else is pretty flat. So I'm willing to answer any questions you guys have.
Committee, any questions, comments, concerns, motions?
I would move approval.
Supervisor Gearston moves and Supervisor Nudo seconds. Any questions or comments from the committee or anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes.
Thank you.
Next is Matt Lace will present the administrative and finance.
That's on 264.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the purpose is there.
Yeah, I can do the administrative services budget first. Page 264, that is what we call our core account budget for this building. It's just the second floor here. It's a very small budget, not much has changed. The telecommunications and printing and duplication is up a little bit. But we also decreased the furniture and fixture budget by about 1,500. Overall budget is 9,300, down 900 from last year.
Okay. Is he doing more on this or is that by itself? By itself technically?
Yeah.
Okay. It's been moved by Supervisor Kirby, seconded by Supervisor Gaschke to approve that section. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passing.
Thank you. We'll flip over to the general finance budget, which is on page 259. As a refresher from our budget vision meeting, finance includes not only the fiscal staff and services on second floor in this building, but also those that report to the finance director from the Public Works and Human Services offices as well. So in our budget, you'll see a bunch of ins and outs. I'll go through each of these in more detail, but that's kind of the gist of it. They're originally charged here and we transfer them out. So overall, the finance budget has increased by a total of 56,000 or roughly 3.51%. The personnel appropriation budget has a net increase of 45,000. The total increase is actually 71,000 with salaries and benefits, but 26,000 is charged out to Human Services and Public Works. So 45,000 impact there. The accounting and auditing line went up about 7,800. That's for increased fees, service fees. The other professional services budget, you'll see that it has an increase of about 114,000. However, if you drop to the bottom, this is that in and out. The interdepartmental charge row 591000 also has a corresponding decrease or a charge out of 111,000. So roughly,
take a minute and explain that.
So
Because I see Supervisor Kirby's like head going together.
Absolutely.
So she has a question.
Yep.
And so I'll head that off by going into a little more detail on that, those departmental charges. Thank you.
This specifically, the
For the other professional services, that's our fiscal services contract, A&O. If you're familiar.
Okay.
Me and Barnard are also part of A&O. But specifically that in and out charge, so that 111,000 increase to the charge out is actually the cost increase of human services and public works staff. So those charges are originally entered into our system in the other professional services line within finance, but then we allocate them out with journal entries to those departments.
So they wash
Which
out.
they can benefit then from grant drawdowns and things of that nature.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
So similar to the contracted services that, again, if you go back up to the personnel accounts, you'll see another interdepartmental charge. That's because we separate between county employed staff and contracted staff. Good, okay, all right, sounds good. The only other increases are small. We had a small bump in our subscriptions line, about 350. That's for our Runsheimer. That is a subscription that we pay for mileage reimbursement, travel reimbursement. We have it's like a small study for that. Other than that, really the only thing worth of note is the public liability insurance that went up about 1,000, and I think you've heard from the oversight committees that we've had an actuarial study done on our public liability insurance, and we have reallocated that budget that way. So that's generally all I have for finance.
Supervisor Gearston.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval. I have a question.
Supervisor Gearston moves the approval, seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Supervisor Gearston, you have the
Thank you,
floor.
Mr. Chairman. The Runsheimer, is it still called Runsheimer? I thought they were bought.
Oh,
by-
it's Modus. It's Modus.
What's it called?
Oh, no, it's actually Modus. MODUS.
MOTUS. Okay. Are they still?
They're still.
Are they still headquartered there? They got bought by some big conglomerate?
Yeah, if you would have said Modus, you would have said who?
Oh, okay. All right, good. That was my question. I yield.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Supervisor Nordigan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, thank you, Barnard, Patty. 2023, we had an operating transfer in of $4.7 million. What is that? Or what was that?
I can answer that. That's actually a accounting error. That is our lapsing to the general fund at year-end close. Typically, we would have that entry hit the non-departmental subdivision, and it looks like it hit the general finance subdivision. Same effect, but that's what that is.
Where did it come from again?
That's our year-end close, the lapse to the general fund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, usually it's in the
Maybe just like
non-departmental.
here.
Yep, yeah, I saw that too.
Thank you. Thank you, Barnard. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I mean, after hearing all this, I have this all marked up and you answered most of it. The only one I have here is overtime, and I know it's very small, but it went from 4,500 to 8,500. What is that?
That's, Patty, correct me if I'm wrong or misspeak, but that is for implementing our new HR payroll system. We anticipate increased hours with staff. That also correlates to the increased staff development line as well. So it's for implementing the new system.
Okay.
The payroll staff is hourly, so the time that they will spend testing the system will be
Okay.
paid out in overtime.
All right. I have nothing else. Any other questions or comments by anybody? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Let's stick around and do any other questions.
61.
Non-departmental. Taking the baton for non-departmental. These are items that are generally county-wide related items, so they don't land in necessarily any specific department budget, and that's why it's called the non-departmental.
Good idea.
So the first line is salaries, that's our vacancy number. That's the vacancy for the county, for the I call the big three. So that doesn't include for human services, sheriff's department, or public works. This is every other department. Same with the medical insurance, 200,000 line, that's partially vacancy adjustment. And also historically, we've had things come in when we're negotiating things regarding health insurance, savings, comes in late, and instead of adjusting all the departments' budgets, we just adjust it all on one line here. Save a bunch of time of having to allocate that small dollar amount throughout the county. We took down salary and benefits line item. That's a line item that's used for discretionary. That's for special wage assignments and that sort of thing. This county executive uses that much less than the previous. Interdepartmental personnel charges, you'll see a big drop there. So last year we had not only, so we allocate some personnel, the HR department's budget out to various components in the county. So for human services, so they can draw down on grants. Public works also to a lesser degree, so they can draw down some grants. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we stopped charging out to Brookside because financially they were really struggling. So that was absorbed within this non-departmental budget. With this budget, we're taking their allocation and charging it to Brookside. So when Tammy gets her spiel on Tuesday or Wednesday, she'll explain that. Let's see, there's 145,000 here. This is the historical society contribution, 145, that stayed the same. Looking down at the revenues below, so sales tax, we're going to keep that flat. We've been underperforming the last couple of years. We're hoping to catch it back on the upswing. Sales on the sales tax, the last couple of months I've been encouraged. We're seeing some uptick in those revenues with this last month, plus this last month being a record August month, so that was good. The state share taxes line item, that went up $850,000. So that line item is made up of the municipal and utility aid. So the component that went up there is the municipal aid. That's the state proportion allocation to the county. That increased slightly. Computer aid, and then the personal property tax. So when Act 12 was passed, in that act, it stated that the counties would be made whole for the portion of personal property tax that was going away. So that's 760,000. So that's the majority of the increase here for 2025. The 880,000, 760,000 is that increase. I think there's a couple of other changes otherwise, but materially, those are the large changes from year to year. And on the vein of operating transfers out, if you see in 2023, that 2.2 million, that's in the 2023 actual, that's the amount that we lapsed into the Human Services Building Fund. That's why it's showing there. That's why hopefully we'll be able to put in a number for that for 2024. We'll see. That's it for non-departmental.
Questions? Supervisor Kirby?
So with the personal property tax shared revenue, is that going to stay flat then?
Yes.
Okay, so it wouldn't.
I don't believe that is indexed. I
Okay.
could be wrong because they have indexed several things that they didn't used to index. This is new. So I'm not exactly sure, but I expect that it will stay flat.
Okay, yeah, I knew it wasn't indexed. I was just wondering if it was based on anything like, any kind of census information or anything like that.
Well,
So
it was based on a base year.
Okay.
And then from that point on, it was gonna be.
It'll stay the same. Okay.
Supervisor Gama?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is this NSF service fee, line item?
Oh, yes, this is a fee that's charged for checks that come back in NSF. So there's charges that are.
Do you know what kind of services we use with them?
It's
per service?
It's actually, this is a fee that we charge.
Oh, we charge, okay,
We charge.
Okay,
It's a revenue line.
Okay,
Yeah, not a huge dollar amount, but
sure. Is it $50 a check?
Yes.
Is that right? It hasn't changed.
we haven't changed very much.
So they request us to do something for them?
If someone bounces a check,
Then we request that
they write us another check and we add $50 to that.
Gotcha. Okay. Never mind. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions, comments? Motion.
I move approval.
Supervisor Gearson moves approval of this section. Supervisor Gaskey seconds it. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Right, the next budget line item or page is 386. This is our debt service. Not a whole lot of line items, but I'll explain each one. So on the expense side, there's the principal and interest. That's the breakdown that we get off of the schedules we get from Ellers. Breakdown on the amounts that we're paying down on our previous issues. 21,915,000. On the revenue side, that city payment. Kenosha County, the PSV. So I went back and looked, 2010, we expanded the safety building. And the component that was allocated to the city, we borrowed that money on their behalf and they've been paying us back since 2010. That will end in 2030. So we still got, I think, 6 years left. So this is the 2025. So they cut us a check for that dollar amount. Advertised amount that's a little different, as you can see. It was 395, 23, 397 and 24. It's 403. The other offset revenue is that premium on bonds. So this is that, you recall when we sold our bonds in August and got the money in September. That's because of our AAA rating. This is the premium that we see on our bonds, and legally we have to use that premium amount to reduce our debt service. So that's why that's there. In net, the overall levy for debt service increased about 850,000, in line with what our projections were. Entertain any questions?
Questions or comments? Supervisor Gearson.
I would move approval and then I have a question if I get a second.
Supervisor Gearson moves approval. Supervisor Nudo seconds. Supervisor Gearson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Arna, on the premium, is that a cumulative premium? Or how much of the premium from this last sale is in that number?
There is another dollar amount, I believe it's 400 some thousand that we'll use for next year.
Come from this year's sale.
From this year's sale, yes.
This is a component, it was $1 million that we received in training, so this is a portion of it, and this is allocated to the 26th.
Yeah.
So we had $1 million for this year, 400 for next year.
Correct.
Thank you. I yield.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Human Services.
Resources.
Human Services Resources. Human Resources.
Human.
We're all human.
Right to hope so. So where are we starting?
We will start on page 327 with the Human Resources Division budget. That's all right.
It's your show. Tell us. 327.
All right, so I'm starting with the org chart. I'll point out, you'll see there, it's listed 7 FTEs for human resources. We actually have a staff of 8. So like you've heard, for example, with Corporation Counsel's office, we have 2 of our employees where part of their salary is designated out. So half of our assistant director of HR goes to workers' comp budget, and half of our benefit specialist goes to the health insurance budget. Also, we have a title change here. Our today's EDI coordinator, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator, we're looking to rename that to our Belonging and Inclusion Coordinator. I believe that's a better fit for the role.
That role is focused on ensuring that all of our employees feel a sense of belonging and are included in our culture. So we want to rename that position. No financial impact. No change. And then we also have a reclassification of an HR business partner to an HR business partner senior, which we would be looking to do later in 2025. This would be a progression after 7 years as a business partner with Kenosha County. That would be our business partner, Karen Terry, who primarily focuses on Department of Public Works and courts. So she would move at the time of her anniversary when she's got 7 years in that role. So those are personnel type changes we're looking for next year. So going to page 328, and then detail, of course, starting on 329. Our budget overall is down a bit. Personnel costs are up primarily due to those regular salary increases or regular annual increases, we like to say, rather than step increases. And health insurance elections. Dropping down to staff development, you'll see a reduction in that. We actually had budgeted in 2024 for attending an out-of-state conference, and that conference is actually going to be held here in January, so we can save some expenses on that. That's a law enforcement investigation conference that we're looking forward to. Then in county-wide, that next section down, we have a reduction in overtime and temporary salaries. Most of our divisions are now budgeting for those expenses, so we have been over time reducing the human resources countywide budgets. But we leave some in there, of course, for those unexpected events, things that those divisions are expecting or budgeting, such as longer term leaves where we need to bring in temporary employees to fill in and assist. And then we also have an intern in there. We participate in the civic internship program through UW Parkside. So we have an intern with human resources through that program. Going to the next page, employment testing and exams are up 30,000, and other professional services going down a little over 20,000. So those are the bigger changes to the budget, and then of course no ARPA funds for next year.
Any questions or comments? Supervisor Kirby.
I'm gonna ask the same thing I always ask. What's another professional services?
Sure. So other professional services for us, that would be some training that we might do, consultants if we need to bring someone in, if we have an employee relations matter that we need to have someone brought in, if we have a grievance that's appealed, we need to bring in an independent hearing officer. Sometimes we bring in extra mental health support if we have a critical incident, for example. And of course, other consultants such as Carlson Detman, which is now known as Total Rewards for compensation. So our market refresh is the major part of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Supervisor Grady.
This kind of piggybacks on Supervisor Kirby's question, but it was other professional services. Does that include what corporation counsel referred to as outside lawyer consult, specialized terms of employment? Is this all tied into one or is it separate?
We do incur some of that if we have them consult. For example, we had an outside law firm consult with us on refreshing our family and medical leave policy. Sure. So we covered that. But generally, if we have a matter that we believe might go into, become a claim or something like that, goes through Corporation Council. I work with Corporation Council to decide if we're bringing in.
So not that you can predict the future entirely, because no one can, but just with the status of things as they are we anticipating any significant exposure in those types of lawyer-related things for 2025, or are we just even keel, or where are we at?
Well, I like to think a big part of my job is reducing that exposure.
Right.
So I would hope not, but, you know, things come up.
So there's nothing in the horizon that
Not any more than usual.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, some question.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, other professional services, we in 2023 finished with 50,000. And then halfway through, we're at 10,000. So I'm sure that there's some figuring out of past practices and there in that number to get us to the 45, right? Because that seemed to bounce around a lot.
Yeah, it's based on what she said, things that come up and only 10,000 have been expended through June.
Right.
And the expectation is the balance through the end of the year.
What did we put $15,000 in ARPA money in there for?
That went towards testing and exams, because we expected an increase in the testing that would be done.
Okay.
So we helped to meet each of them.
Okay. We had a motion on this.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Supervisor Gama, seconded by Supervisor Gaske. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Now, if we could jump to the civil service budget on 357.
What?
357. Overall, this budget is down as well, 6,000. We have reduced the per diem closer to actual. Our civil service commissioners receive a per diem for the meetings that they attend. Fitness for duty is down, and we've reduced employment testing as well. We are moving to a different testing vendor that better suits the department and has some savings. So, very brief budget.
Supervisor Gearston, move approval. Been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, we can move on to insurances. All right.
Page 372. Sorry, Dean.
Sorry.
I like it out.
So for health insurance for 2025, we are not planning to change the plan design or the network. Just a little recap, as some of you may recall, we switched health insurance vendors for 2024. Our previous vendor, Humana, got out of the employer-sponsored insurance market, so we had to go out. And we worked with our broker, Brown & Brown, and Chris Messer is here, lead on our Brown & Brown team, to assist us in securing UMR as our administrator through a program with the WCA. We are utilizing United Healthcare's ACO tiered network for our PPO plan for our general employees. And then we moved our pharmacy benefit management to RightWay. We were able to hold premiums steady for this year, and we decided for 2025 that we would continue with UMR. We've had some good experience with UMR and the ACO tiered network, and then continuing with RightWay PBM as well. We are budgeting to increase employee contribution share by 2% for each of our wellness tiers. Speaking of wellness, we are moving from Vitality, which is our current wellness vendor, to a new vendor called WellBright. Got a lot of W's and R's here. Vitality, they haven't been meeting our expectations in terms of technology. So we wanted to get to a new vendor for a better member experience there. In the past, our wellness program has also, in addition to those premium incentives for focusing on your health, we've offered some engagement incentives in the form of a rewards mall. And we've done that for years. With Rightway, we're looking to cap that program to $150 per member to get to the highest tier in the form of a gift card. So very similar to many wellness rewards programs that employers offer. That will also help save a few dollars in our overall program. To add to our cost controls as well, we're moving our stop loss coverage to a new vendor. Our incumbent, the one we have currently, gave us a 30% increase for renewal. Brown & Brown helped us secure a quote with a new vendor that limited that increase to only 14%.
Bless you.
We're also implementing some additional pharmacy management strategies targeting those high cost prescriptions. Prescription costs are a significant part of our plan experience. So we are gonna continue to work to manage those, particularly those higher cost prescriptions, injectables, and steering folks toward biosimilars. So we're going to work with Rightway to continue to try to control some of our costs from that perspective.
Okay, normally I would go to the committee, but I'm gonna jump in just so we're clear on this. Brown & Brown seems to have done a really nice job because I heard about like 8 different vendors named. So how does this work for our employees? I mean, we're going out and we're saving money and we're hitting all the different pieces, but can you explain that a little bit for the committee? And me mainly. Sorry, committee, I had to throw you in there.
So costs, particularly with prescription pharmacy, continue to go up.
Sure.
We are experiencing some nice claims experience in terms of our medical with UMR and the network, the ACO network. We are trying to do what we can to save dollars and make for a good member experience. We try to limit changes as much as possible because health insurance is a very personal thing to most people. And when they need to use it, it's for generally a serious reason. So when we make a vendor change, we do so, we have to have a really good reason to do that.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I've watched our insurances through joint services and through the county for going on now 17 years. So I understand where we're going, and I can appreciate that. I'm just asking, I guess, for the member experience that you're talking about, is this easy to navigate? You're going from from Vitality to another program, which your reasons, I don't want to micromanage, but I'm just hearing a lot of vendors and I just want to know, and our costs are good. I have no complaints about anything you're doing. I just want to understand that our people are comfortable in this, along with this ride. So,
yeah, absolutely. So,
okay.
For example, for 2024, when we had a lot of different vendors, a lot of change, we made sure we were doing in-person meetings. We got out there to the employees to explain things. Brown & Brown does a great job with us and for us. They are present at those meetings. They bring in the vendors to represent. We do a presentation. We create an online presentation that we also send out. for employees, so they can do that virtually on their own if they want to. And they create a new hire version of that. Our HR staff sits down with new hires and walks through that. So we try to make sure we're explaining it as plainly as possible to those employees, and that we're there as resources when they do have questions and need help with that.
And if I could jump in, sure. Appreciate it. So Kenosha County, as I'm sure most of you or all of you know, is a self-funded health plan. And the beauty of a self-funded health plan, and really the true value there, is an employer's ability to find the best vendors to patch in where appropriate. And in a self-funded health plan, you're really looking at three key components. You've got your medical network and administrator, you've got your pharmacy benefit manager or PBM, and then you've got your administrative expenses. The key component there is stop loss. Now, in a self-funded world, it is not uncommon to have multiple vendors. And so in this case, UMR is your medical TPA. UMR accesses the United Healthcare Nexus ACO network. The county did a great job. We worked extensively last year to vet new options because the county had to. The ACO itself, United Healthcare, tells us the contracts alone are 6 to 8% better. And you still have a very broad network like you had before, like the Choice Plus network is. Brightway is a PBM that prides itself in flexibility, best in market type solutions, integration with cost plus programs like Mark Cuban's cost plus program. The county has made the decision to continue to take clinical program recommendations from the pharmacy benefit manager in adopting biosimilars. Biosimilars aren't new to the marketplace, but only recently have they really significantly taken off in recommendations. Many PBMs now are actually eliminating like Humira's from their formularies and replacing them with biosimilars because of the medical information now available. Stop loss, even though Clara mentioned Symetra, that is a behind the scenes administrative piece. That's your catastrophic risk insurance. As the consultant for the county and for all of our clients that are self-funded, we shop that every single year to find the best opportunity in the market for the county. So, and Clara mentioned it as well. So these, I just point that out because it sounds like there are a lot of vendors, but this is very common in a self-funded world. A lot of it is seamless to employees, and the county does a fantastic job communicating those benefits to employees. So, and that helps certainly with any transitions that need to be made.
Thank you. That sheds a little light on what we're talking about. So that's why I jumped in. So any questions from the committee? Supervisor Gashi.
As far as the wellness plan and the new provider for that, will county employees lose incentives that they had earned, so to speak? Is it a lose to use it by the end of the year? Use to lose it?
Well, it will be, but we will communicate that. So once we have a decision, we'll make sure that the employees know that if they want to use those rewards, they get out there and make their purchases, if you will. So they don't have to use it as long as they get out there and use it.
Questions or concerns? Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, sure. So moved. Been moved by Supervisor Gearston, second by Supervisor Kirby. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Right, we go to workers' comp. So 378, 379 in the book.
Thanks.
This is a good story. Our aggressive management and partnership with WIMIC in our new nurse triage program paradigm, which was implemented April 1st of this year, has done well for us. So it's taken us from 1.445 to down to 1.225 for this budget. We've had surpluses the last few years, so we were confident in being able to reduce that item. If you look down the workers' comp claims. And then corresponding down to workers' comp insurance, 449,600. It's, on wood, we're doing all right here. And again, it's aggressive management. Our workers' comp are managed by all of our HR business partners, led by Ashley Letterman, our assistant HR director.
Supervisor Gearston.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval, then I have a comment if I get a second.
Been moved by Supervisor Gearston, second by Supervisor Gaske. You have the floor, Supervisor Gearston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have to tip our hat to you, to the County Executive Kirkman, to you and the rest of the finance team on the management of these insurances that saved us at probably 7 figures. And this one alone is $500,000 if you go back even another click. It's 1 million, over 1.5 million on the workers' comp. So you really have saved a lot of money, and without any drop off in service, delivery of service to the public or delivery of benefits to the employees. So this is a great job here. So I just had to recognize that, and the whole administrative team worked to achieve that. So I wanted to recognize that, and with that, I yield the floor.
Any other questions? Supervisor Kirby.
So other professional services, what's included in that number?
For work comp, so we could have evaluations of jobs, different types of vendors that might engage. Yeah.
Okay.
Evaluations. So much of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concern? It's already been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
All right, liability insurance.
Page.
Which I would say again, another good story. So this has already been mentioned, but I'll just say, I know you're hearing of some variances in terms of liability insurance, and that's due to that actuarial study that was done and the reallocation of those funds. So, but overall, we have had a reduction in this fund. See, I think the right notes here. So the WMIC premium, I'll just point out, holding flat there, done a good job. WMIC has worked with us in terms of holding our SIR, or basically our deductible, to help keep that premium in a steady spot. We've also had good renewal for cyber liability coverage. You'll hear more about that when the information technology division comes forward. We've adjusted, if you go down to the revenue, we've adjusted the interest, the operating and capital dividends closer to actual. I can add some color to this one as well if you need it.
Overall, about $100,000 decrease in liability insurance.
Again, we have a good team working on liability.
I could just add a comment.
You certainly may.
Clara talked about the cyber liability policy, but this is a point that we bring to the rating agencies. It isn't normal for some places can't even get cyber liability insurance, but not only have we secured very good cyber liability insurance, but our rates have gone down because of the proactiveness of IT, as Clara said, will be discussed by the CIO when he comes to present.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Questions or comments? Supervisor Nudo?
Motion to approve.
It's been moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Gama to approve. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Youth and Governance, did you vote aye? Right. See, it's unanimous, passes.
Excellent. So in terms of the, policy changes, talk with the chairman, we'll do that on Thursday night as part of the budget resolution discussion, so.
Budget resolution. Okay, anybody else have anything else? It's been moved by Supervisor Nudo, seconded by Supervisor Gearston to adjourn. Anybody want to stay? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned till tomorrow night. Thank you all.